Caleb Rourke came back to Montana with one duffel bag, one bad knee, one German shepherd, and no intention of staying long enough for the coffee to cool. The ranch sat at the end of a county road. The plows had half forgotten, buried under a hard white sky. Fence posts leaned like old men. The barn roof sagged in the middle. The wind moved across the pasture with teeth in it, dragging loose snow over the ground until the whole place looked erased. 10 years. That was how long he had stayed gone. 10 years since the call from the county coroner. 10 years since the deputy on the phone told him his mother and father were dead before the truck stopped rolling. 10 years since Caleb stood in a hangar outside Kandahar with red dust on his boots and a satellite phone in his hand, hearing home turn into a casualty report. He had not made the funeral. That fact lived under his ribs like shrapnel. Duke shifted in the passenger seat of the old Ford, his amber eyes fixed on the ranch house ahead. The dog was 90 pounds of scarred muscle and quiet judgment retired from a world that did not print his name in any file anyone was allowed to read. His left ear had a notch torn from it. His muzzle had gone gray around the edges. He still watched doors like they owed him money. Caleb killed the engine. The sudden silence hit him wrong. No rotor wash, no radio chatter, no distant thump of mortars, just wind ticking metal and Duke breathing through his nose. "All right," Caleb muttered. Quick in, quick out. There were papers in his jacket pocket. Sale documents, a clean exit. Some developer out of Bozeman wanted the land for vacation cabins and rich men pretending they understood quiet. Caleb did not care. The place was a wound with a mailbox. He would sign, hand over the keys, and drive south before the storm pinned him here. Then he saw the smoke. A thin gray ribbon rose from the chimney and bent east in the wind. Caleb went still. No power had been turned on, no caretakers, no tenants. The realtor had sworn the house was empty. Duke gave a low sound, not quite a growl. Caleb's hand moved to the pistol under his coat before he knew he had decided. His pulse tightened. The world shrank the way it used to before a breach. Door, window, porch, blind corner by the woodpile. Tracks in the snow half filled already. Fresh tracks, small boots, maybe one adult, maybe more. He opened the truck door and stepped into the storm. Snow snapped against his face. Duke dropped beside him without a command close to Caleb's left knee, moving smooth and low. The porch boards groaned under his weight. Caleb looked at the front door. Same brass knob, same crack in the frame from when he was 17, and his father kicked it open after Caleb locked himself out during a February freeze. Same porch hook where his mother used to hang a Christmas wreath even in years when money was tight, and faith was the only thing still paid up. His throat closed. He shoved it down. "Federal habit," he whispered to Duke. "We knock before we kick." He raised his fist. The door flew open. The shotgun barrel came up fast and stopped 3 inches from his chest. Caleb saw rust on the receiver. Cheap double barrel. Old, shaking. Then he saw the woman holding it. She stood barefoot inside the doorway, wrapped in a man's flannel shirt, too big for her hair, tangled face white from cold and fear. Her hands trembled so hard, the muzzle jittered against the air. There was a bruise fading along one cheekbone and a fresh split at the corner of her lip. "Get back," she said. Her voice was hoarse, not threatening, wrecked. Caleb did not move. The barrel was pointed at his sternum. Close enough that if she fired, there would be no medical plan, no evac, no corpsman yelling pressure and move. Just black. His breathing cut short. A hallway became a tunnel. The wind became rotor blades. The shotgun became a muzzle flash in a mud-walled room outside Jalalabad. His hands started to lift, but not in surrender. Muscle memory came awake, mean and cold. Step inside the barrel. Strip the weapon, break the wrist, put the threat down before the threat puts you down. Sarah saw it. She did not know his name yet, but she saw what came over his eyes, her own filled with panic. "Please," she whispered, "please don't." That word hit harder than the gun. Duke moved. Not fast. Not attacking. He slipped forward through the snow, dusting the porch, body loose, head low, as if approaching a child holding broken glass. Caleb's voice caught in his chest before he could call him off. The dog reached the barrel, lifted his muzzle, and nudged it down. The shotgun dipped. Sarah froze. Duke looked up at her. He did not bare his teeth. He did not bark. This was a dog who had dragged men out of blown trucks, found bombs under floorboards, and taken commands whispered in the dark outside places that did not exist on any map. He knew fear when he smelled it. He knew guilt. He knew rage. This woman smelled like terror and snowmelt and sleepless nights. Duke pressed his head gently against the shotgun again until the barrel pointed at the porch boards. Sarah's arms gave out. The gun slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull wooden clatter. Caleb stepped back like he had been struck. The woman covered her mouth with both hands, but the sob broke through anyway. It was small at first, almost silent. Then it folded her in half. Duke stayed with her shoulder against her legs, holding her upright without force. Caleb stared at them. The old house breathed heat behind her. Wood smoke, damp blankets. Someone had been living in his dead mother's kitchen. Someone had dragged fear across his threshold and locked it inside. He should have been angry. He had planned on being angry. Instead, he looked at Duke and the dog looked back. A sitrep passed between them without a word. Not hostile, not clear, not safe. Caleb bent slowly and picked up the shotgun by the stock. He broke it open. Empty chamber on the left. One shell on the right. Only one. The woman had aimed the last thing she had in the world at him and still could not pull the trigger. "What's your name?" Caleb asked. She swallowed, shaking so badly her teeth clicked. "Sarah." The wind slammed snow against the windows. Somewhere beyond the pasture, the storm rolled closer, swallowing the road behind him. Caleb looked past her into the dim hall, then back at the smoke rising from his chimney. "You alone in there, Sarah?" Her eyes flicked downward. Just once. Caleb caught it. So did Duke. The dog turned his head toward the dark belly of the house and went rigid. Sarah did not answer Caleb's question. That was answer enough. The old house creaked around them while the storm took the valley apart, one white sheet at a time. Caleb stood in the front hall with the unloaded shotgun in one hand and his pistol under his coat, watching the woman try to look harmless and failing because terror had already told on her. Duke stared past her toward the kitchen. Caleb followed the dog's eyes. A pan sat on the stove. One spoon, one chipped mug, 2 blankets near the fire. One adult trying to look like one adult. Caleb had spent half his life reading rooms before men lied in them. Safe house, border motel, briefing cell at Langley with coffee gone cold, and lawyers pretending they had never heard the word rendition. People always left a pattern. Sarah's pattern had a missing piece. "You can stay until the road clears," Caleb said. Sarah blinked. "What, 3 days, maybe less? Storm moves east, you leave. I sign the papers, I leave. Nobody gets cute." Her chin trembled. "Thank you. Don't thank me." Caleb set the shotgun on top of the hall cabinet out of reach. "You point another weapon at me, Duke makes the call." "Not me." Duke gave her one slow look, then walked to Caleb's side. That night, Caleb slept in the living room with his boots on, back against the wall, pistol under his right hand. He did not trust the woman. He did not trust the house. He did not trust sleep most of all. Sarah stayed upstairs, or pretended to. Every pipe knock sounded like a footstep. Every wind slam became a door breach. Around 2 in the morning, Caleb woke with his hand on the pistol and his heart trying to punch through his chest. Duke was sitting by the cold fireplace watching the basement door. Caleb whispered, "Not tonight." The dog did not move. By morning, Sarah had made coffee so weak it looked like creek water. She placed the mug on the table and backed away like Caleb was a live grenade. He noticed her sleeves pulled low over her wrists. He noticed she did not eat. He noticed, too, how her eyes kept drifting to the floorboards near the back of the kitchen, where an old trapdoor led down to the root cellar and the hay storage cut into the slope beneath the barn wall. On the second night, the storm got worse. The power died at 8:17. The house fell into black. Caleb lit 2 oil lamps from his father's old emergency shelf. The yellow light made the walls look sick. Sarah sat near the stove with a blanket around her shoulders, staring at nothing. Duke refused his food. That got Caleb's attention. The shepherd sniffed the bowl once, then turned away. His ears flattened. A low rumble rolled out of his chest, not loud, but deep enough to tighten every nerve in the room. "What is it?" Caleb asked. Duke walked to the kitchen trapdoor. Sarah stood so fast her chair scraped backward. "No," she said. Caleb looked at her. "No what?" "It's rats." Her voice broke. "Old houses have rats." Duke lowered his head and clawed at the seam in the floor. Once. Twice, then harder. Wood splintered under his nails. Caleb reached for the lamp. Sarah lunged between him and the trapdoor. "Please don't go down there." There it was again. "Please." The word had weight now. Caleb's face went flat. "Move." She shook her head. "I said move." Duke barked once, sharp and brutal. Not at Sarah, at the floor. Something answered. Not a rat. A sound so small Caleb almost missed it under the wind. A scrape, then a wet little cough. Sarah made a noise like someone had cut the bones out of her. Caleb pulled his pistol, grabbed the lamp, and lifted the trapdoor. Cold air breathed up from below. The steps groaned under him. The cellar smelled of dirt, hay mold, kerosene, and old fear. Duke pushed past his leg and went straight to the northwest corner where rotten planks had been nailed over a shallow storage pit. The dog began tearing at them. Caleb holstered the pistol and used both hands. One board came up, then another. "God help me," Sarah whispered from the stairs. Caleb ripped the last plank free. The lamp showed a hole in the packed earth. Inside it, curled tight beneath a torn coat, was a little boy. 6, maybe. Small for his age. Hair dark with sweat. Lips blue from cold. His arms were locked around himself like he had been taught not to make a sound even when the world forgot him. Duke climbed halfway into the pit and pressed his muzzle against the boy's cheek. The boy's eyes fluttered open. He did not scream. That was worse. Caleb felt something tear loose inside his chest. All day he had guarded himself against Sarah, against an intruder, against some county scam, some local mess, some civilian trouble he wanted no part of. And under his feet, a child had been freezing. "What's his name?" Caleb asked, but his voice had gone rough. Sarah slid down the steps and collapsed beside the pit. "Noah," she said. "His name is Noah." Caleb lifted the boy out. Noah weighed almost nothing. A bird wrapped in bones. Duke whined soft and broken and kept his body pressed against the child's legs as Caleb carried him upstairs. Sarah followed, sobbing without sound. In the kitchen, Caleb wrapped Noah in every blanket he could find. He warmed water on the stove with hands that had once diffused worse than bombs and now shook over a tin cup. Only then did Sarah speak. "My husband is looking for us," she said. Caleb looked up. Outside, the storm buried the road. Inside, Duke laid his head beside Noah's tiny hand and did not blink. Sarah's husband was the sheriff. Caleb heard the words and felt the room turn colder than the storm outside. Not ex-husband, not boyfriend, not some drunk with a temper and a restraining order. Sheriff Marcus Vale, the man with County Keys radio codes, deputies under him, and a badge that made good people step aside before they asked the right question. Sarah sat at the kitchen table with Noah wrapped in blankets against her chest. The boy had not spoken. Not once. His eyes stayed open too wide, tracking every creak in the old house like the walls might betray him. Duke lay at Noah's feet. Caleb stood by the window watching the snow chew up the yard. "Start from the beginning," he said. Sarah shook her head. "There isn't one. Not anymore. It's all middle. All running." "Then start with why you hid a 6-year-old under my floor." She flinched, but she answered. Marcus had not been a monster when she married him. Or maybe he had been, and she had just mistaken control for protection. He wore the uniform well, shook hands at church, carried groceries for widows, knew every veteran in the county by name, and never missed Memorial Day. Then the late-night calls started. Men from out of state. Black SUVs without plates. A private airstrip north of town that was supposed to be closed every winter, but somehow kept its runway scraped clean. Marcus called them federal consultants. Sarah heard him say asset once through a half-shut door. Another time she heard Beltway money. Then came the files. "My brother worked dispatch," Sarah said. He pulled a call log by mistake. A missing trucker, 2 Canadian IDs, a satellite phone registered through a shell company in Virginia. He thought it was drugs at first. Caleb said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He copied everything onto a drive. He told me if anything happened, take Noah and run. Her voice fell apart. 3 days later, they found his car in a ravine. Noah squeezed his eyes shut. Caleb saw it. Not grief. Memory. "What did the boy see?" Caleb asked. Sarah's face went gray. Duke lifted his head. Sarah looked down at her son. Marcus standing by the wreck before anyone called it in. The house went quiet, except for the stove ticking. Caleb had sat in classified briefings where men in clean suits explained dirty work with clean words. Cutouts, contractors, off-book transfers, regional leverage, the kind of language that turned human beings into cargo and murder into administrative fog. Montana was supposed to be clean air and fence lines, but rot traveled well. "Where's the drive?" Caleb asked. Sarah looked toward the root cellar. Caleb gave a dry laugh with no humor in it. "Of course. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "Your father helped me once, years ago. I was a kid. I remembered this place. That punched through Caleb before he could guard against it. His father. Dead 10 years, still doing sit-rep from the grave. A distant sound cut across the wind. Duke stood. Caleb moved to the window. Blue and red lights smeared through the snow at the far gate. Sarah stopped breathing. Noah buried his face in her sweater. A siren gave one short whoop, then died. Caleb checked the pistol, then killed the oil lamp with 2 fingers. The kitchen dropped into shadow. Sarah whispered, "He knows." Caleb looked at the boy, the woman, the dog. Then something old and buried stood up inside him. For 10 years, he had been a man avoiding home, avoiding graves, avoiding mirrors. He had told himself he was done being useful, done taking orders from men in windowless rooms, done walking into trouble because somebody weaker was trapped behind it. But the storm had brought a mother and child to his floor, and Marcus Vale had brought a badge to hunt them. Caleb pointed to the cellar door. "Take Noah down. Stay behind the old freezer. Don't move unless Duke comes for you." Sarah grabbed his sleeve. "He'll kill you." Caleb looked at her hand, then her face. "No," he said. "He'll try." Duke followed Caleb to the front hall. The dog's hackles rose along his spine, slow and ugly. His teeth showed now. Not panic, not noise, a promise. Caleb opened the door before Marcus could knock. The sheriff stood on the porch in a heavy black coat, hat brim iced with snow, one hand resting near his sidearm. Behind him, his cruiser idled with the headlights on engine growling like a chained animal. "Caleb Rourke," Marcus said. "Heard you were back." Caleb stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind him. "News travels." Marcus smiled like a man practicing for cameras. "Got a report of a squatter out here. Dangerous woman. Mentally unstable. Possible child endangerment." Duke gave a low growl that crawled through the boards. Marcus's eyes dropped to the dog. For the first time, the sheriff's smile slipped. Caleb saw it and stored it. "You got a warrant?" Caleb asked. "Storm's bad. Don't make this official. Everything's official when a badge shows up on private property." Marcus leaned closer. His voice lost the church handshake. "You don't know what you stepped in, sailor." Caleb held his stare. "Seal," he said. Duke lunged half a step, jaws snapping the air. Marcus jerked back before he could stop himself. Behind Caleb, beneath the floor, a child held his breath. And on the porch, in the white howl of Montana night, the war finally found Caleb Rourke at home. Marcus Vale left the porch smiling. That was how Caleb knew he would come back. The sheriff backed down the steps with both hands spread, playing peace officer for an audience that wasn't there. His cruiser reversed through the snow, red and blue lights fading between the pines, until the ranch swallowed the last glow. Inside, Sarah came up from the cellar with Noah tucked against her hip. "He's not done," she said. "No," Caleb said. "He's making calls." He did not explain the look Marcus had given the windows. Not searching, measuring. He had counted exits, checked sightlines, clocked the barn. The generator shed the weak porch railing. That was not a welfare check. That was target prep. Caleb moved through the house without hurry. Hurry got people killed. He dragged the kitchen table against the back door. He wedged a chair under the cellar latch, not to trap Sarah and Noah in, but to make anyone forcing it pay in noise and time. He found his father's old tool belt and hung it from a nail near the pantry. Hammer, pry bar, fence pliers, rusty but honest. Sarah watched him from the stove. "You've done this before," she said. Caleb looked at Duke. The dog stood by Noah, calm now, but his ears kept turning toward the road. "Different houses," Caleb said. At 11:42, the power came back for exactly 7 seconds. The refrigerator coughed. A hallway bulb flickered. Then the whole ranch went dark again. Caleb smiled once. Amateurs. He pulled open the breaker box and killed the main himself. Sarah whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because they brought night vision," Caleb said. "And cheap night vision hates sudden light." He handed her the old oil lamp unlit. "You and Noah go down. No flame unless I tell you. If you hear Duke twice, you run to the south wall. There's a crawl space behind the feed bins." Sarah's eyes filled. "What if we hear nothing?" Caleb did not answer. She understood anyway. Noah reached out one small hand and touched Duke's head before Sarah carried him down. The dog closed his eyes for half a second, accepting it like a vow. Then the first truck rolled in. No headlights, just tires chewing snow near the barn. Caleb took position beside the front window, pistol low, breathing slow. The storm covered their engine noise, but not enough. 3 sets of boots, then a 4th heavier limping slightly. "Marcus." A man whispered outside the kitchen door. Caleb caught pieces. "Thermal's junk in this weather. Sheriff said kids inside." Quiet. Caleb's grip tightened. Duke vanished into the dark hall, silent as smoke. The back door hit once. The chair held. It hit again. Wood cracked. Caleb waited until the 3rd hit blew the latch loose. The first gunman stepped into the kitchen with a rifle up and a green glow over one eye. Caleb snapped the flashlight on high. The man cursed, blinded. Caleb hit him hard with the cast-iron pan from the stove. The rifle clattered across the floor. Caleb drove an elbow into his ribs and swept his legs out. The man went down and stayed down, groaning. No gunshot. Good. From the hallway came a shout, then Duke's growl. The second man fired into the ceiling. Plaster dust rained down. Duke came low and fast, hitting him at the thigh, not tearing, just crushing enough to make the man drop the weapon and scream for his mother. Caleb crossed the room and kicked the rifle under the sofa. "Stay down," Caleb said. The man stayed down. A window shattered in the front room. Third man. Caleb felt the old switch flip in his skull. No fear now. No memories. No burning truck. No funeral he missed. Just geometry. Distance. Noise. Breath. The intruder climbed through the window with a handgun and bad balance. Caleb let him get one boot inside, then slammed the curtain rod across his wrist. The gun fell into the snow outside. Caleb grabbed his coat and pulled him face first onto the floorboards. The man tried to rise. Duke appeared beside him, teeth inches from his cheek. He stopped trying. Then Marcus fired through the cellar door. Once. The round punched into the wood above the latch. Sarah screamed below. Caleb turned and saw Marcus at the hall entrance, sidearm raised, face twisted in the dark. "You should have sold the place," Marcus said. Caleb raised his pistol. Marcus moved first. Not at Caleb. At the cellar gap. He dropped low and fired toward the shadow beneath the stairs, where Noah had made the smallest sound a child could make. Duke launched. Caleb saw him cross the hall in one blur of black and tan. The shot cracked through the house. Duke hit the floor between Marcus and the cellar door, hard enough to shake the boards. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Duke tried to stand. His front legs buckled. Caleb's world went white. Not snow white. Rage white. He hit Marcus before the sheriff could bring the gun around again. The pistol skidded away. Caleb drove him into the wall, then down onto the floor, one knee pinning his shoulder, one hand locked around his wrist. Marcus gasped. In the cellar, Noah began to cry without making a sound. Duke lay in the hall, breathing, shallow amber eyes still fixed on the cellar door. Still guarding. Still on mission. Caleb had Marcus Vale on the floor, with one knee between his shoulder blades and one hand twisted behind his back. The sheriff fought like a trapped animal. Caleb did not. He fought like a man who had gone quiet inside. Marcus bucked once, reaching for the pistol, skidding near the baseboard. Caleb caught his wrist and drove it back with a hard, controlled snap. Marcus cried out and went flat against the boards, breath blasting through his teeth. "Move again," Caleb said, "and I take the other one." Behind him, Duke made a sound Caleb had never heard before. Not a bark, not a whine, a broken breath. Caleb looked over his shoulder. The shepherd lay in the hall, chest rising in shallow pulls, eyes open, body angled between Marcus and the cellar door. Even hurt, even barely able to lift his head, Duke was still watching the threat. Still guarding Noah. Something inside Caleb came apart. He dragged Marcus up by the back of his coat and slammed him against the wall. The sheriff's feet slipped in the dust and splintered wood. His face had lost every bit of courthouse charm. No church smile now. No handshake. Just fear. "You shot my dog," Caleb said. Marcus swallowed. "Rourke, listen." Caleb hit him once in the ribs, hard enough to empty the air from him, then shoved him down beside the broken stair rail. "You aimed at a child." Marcus tried to speak again. Caleb pressed the pistol under Marcus's chin. The house went silent. Even the storm seemed to pause outside the shattered window. Caleb's finger found the trigger. In his head, men were shouting. Not here. Not now. Years back. Dust. Fire. A radio screaming for medevac. A boy in a village doorway. A command decision made by someone in a clean room 7,000 miles away. He had spent 10 years hating himself for surviving things better men did not. Now the hate had a face. Marcus Vale, a badge with rot under it. A man who used law like a weapon and family like cover. Caleb leaned close. His voice was so low, Sarah barely heard it from the cellar steps. Give me one reason. Marcus's eyes darted toward the door, toward the men groaning on the floor, toward the pistol he could not reach. He had none. Then a small hand touched Caleb's wrist. Caleb froze. Noah stood beside him in the hall, barefoot, shaking under a blanket too big for his body. Sarah was behind him, crying one hand over her mouth, too scared to pull him back. The boy looked at Caleb, then at Duke. His lips parted. For the first time since Sarah had found him hiding under that floor, Noah spoke. Save Duke. 2 words. Barely air. They hit Caleb harder than any bullet ever had. His finger came off the trigger. The room returned all at once. The cold, the smoke, Sarah's sobs, Duke's ragged breathing. The old house holding them all like it might collapse from grief. Caleb lowered the gun. Marcus sagged in relief. Caleb drove his boot into the sheriff's chest and pinned him to the floor instead. You don't get mercy from me, Caleb said. You get a judge. Blue lights flashed through the broken window. Real ones. Not Marcus's cruiser. State troopers. 2 SUVs tore into the yard. Headlights cutting white tunnels through the snow. Caleb had made one call before the siege, short and ugly, to a retired Navy corpsman now working emergency services in Helena. The kind of friend who did not ask for proof before moving mountains. The front door burst open. State police hands. Caleb tossed his pistol across the floor and raised both hands. Sheriff Vale is down, he said. 3 armed men in the house, woman and child in the hall. K9 hit. He needs a vet now. The troopers moved fast. Marcus screamed about jurisdiction until one of them rolled him onto his side and cuffed him. Another found the rifle by the sofa. Another found the drive Sarah had hidden under the cellar boards wrapped in oilcloth marked with her brother's handwriting. No one looked at Marcus the same after that. Caleb did not watch them take him. He was already on his knees beside Duke. The dog's eyes tracked him. Tired. Loyal. Sorry somehow, as if he had failed because he could not stand. No, Caleb whispered. Don't you do that. Don't you apologize to me. Sarah pressed towels into Caleb's hands. Noah knelt close, his tiny fingers resting on Duke's paw. Please, the boy whispered again. Caleb gathered Duke into his arms. The shepherd was heavy, but Caleb lifted him like he weighed nothing. Outside, the storm hit his face like knives. Snow blew red across the porch where Duke had been carried through broken glass and splintered wood. Caleb shoved him into the back seat of the Ford while a trooper cleared the road ahead with lights screaming. Sarah climbed in beside Noah. Caleb got behind the wheel. For 10 years he had not prayed. Not in firefights. Not in VA waiting rooms. Not beside his parents' graves. But as the truck tore through the white dark toward the only vet clinic still open in the county, Caleb gripped the wheel and begged God for one thing. Not the ranch. Not justice. Not his own peace. Just one more breath for Duke. Duke made it through surgery at 4:38 in the morning. Caleb knew the time because the clock above the vet clinic desk had a cracked face and he had stared at it long enough to hate every tick. The clinic sat between a feed store and a closed laundromat, its windows filmed with frost. Sarah slept in a plastic chair with Noah curled against her side. A state trooper stood outside the door, coat collar up, watching the street, while the storm burned itself out over the mountains. Nobody said Marcus Vale's name. Not yet. There would be time for that. Time for prosecutors, federal agents, sealed warrants, beltway men pretending they had never used a crooked sheriff as a cutout. The drive Sarah's brother saved had names on it. Dates. Transfers. Enough dirt to drag Marcus and his friends into daylight. But none of that mattered while Duke was behind a swinging metal door fighting for breath. Caleb sat on the floor with his back against the wall. He had not washed the snow from his hands. He had not taken off his coat. For the first time in 10 years, he prayed without bargaining. No polished words, no Sunday voice. Just a broken man asking God not to take the last loyal thing he had left. When the vet finally came out, her hair was pinned up with a pencil, and her eyes looked tired enough to close standing. "He's stubborn," she said. Caleb tried to stand and almost fell. Sarah caught his arm. The vet nodded toward the back room. That saved him. Duke lay on a padded table under warm lights wrapped in clean white bandages. Tubes ran where Caleb did not want to look. His big body looked smaller somehow, shaved and still, but when Caleb stepped close, one amber eye opened, then the other. Caleb put his hand on the table. Duke's tail moved once. Just once. It was enough to break him. Caleb bent over the dog and pressed his forehead against Duke's shoulder. He cried like a man who had held the line too long and finally heard permission to stand down. Duke lifted his head barely an inch and licked the tear off Caleb's cheek. Noah watched from the doorway. Then in a voice still thin from fear, he whispered, "Good boy." Duke's tail moved again. 3 months later, the snow was gone. Montana did not turn gentle all at once. It made you earn spring. The mud came first, thick and ugly, then pale grass, then creek water under the ice. Then one morning the pasture went gold under sunlight so clean it made the old ranch look less like a wound and more like a place waiting to be forgiven. Marcus Vail was awaiting trial in federal custody. His deputies talked. The hired men talked faster. Men in Washington resigned quietly before subpoenas made noise. Sarah's brother was cleared of every lie Marcus had pinned on him, and his name was read aloud in the county courthouse, while Sarah held Noah's hand and did not look away. Justice had not come pretty, but it came. Caleb kept the ranch. He did not say it out loud at first. He just stopped answering the developers' calls, fixed the porch rail, replaced the broken cellar door, bought feed for chickens nobody owned yet. Let Sarah and Noah stay in the upstairs room with the good morning light. Duke healed slow. He hated the bandage, hated the pills, hated being told no. But every afternoon he limped to the yard and sat beside Noah while the boy built forts out of old fence boards. One warm Saturday, Miller from the grocery store drove up in a green pickup older than some churches. He carried a cardboard box under one arm. "Your father asked me to keep this," Miller said. "Told me you'd come back when you were done running." Caleb almost told him to leave. Instead, he opened the box. Inside were old photographs, a pocket Bible with his mother's handwriting in the margins, and a leather journal tied shut with baling twine. Caleb read it on the porch while the sun dropped behind the barn. His father's words were plain. No poetry, no grand speeches. If this place ever feels empty, fill it with people who need shelter. A few pages later, Caleb found Sarah's name. Winter, 20 years back. Found a little girl behind Miller's store. Hungry. Too proud to ask. Gave her soup bread and one of June's quilts. Told her if life ever turned mean, Rourke Land would have a light on. Caleb looked across the yard. Sarah stood by the clothesline, laughing at something Noah had said. The laugh surprised her, like she had forgotten she owned it. Noah threw a tennis ball across the grass. Duke limped after it slow, but determined, then brought it back with his head high. Caleb reached into his jacket and pulled out the sale papers. He tore them once, then again, until the wind carried the pieces over the pasture like dead leaves finally letting go. Sarah turned. She saw the paper. She saw Caleb. Neither of them spoke. Noah ran up the hill with Duke beside him, laughing so hard he had to stop and catch his breath. Caleb stood on his father's porch under a sky washed clean and felt the house behind him breathe warm. For the first time since the call from Kandahar, he was not surviving the day.